Hi. So I came across this video the other day by Michael Singer. He's the author of The Untethered Soul and I think most recently Untethered Living. And it was an explanation of his steps of the spiritual path. And so when I come across somebody else's idea of what these steps are on the spiritual path, I'm always curious because I like to compare, for lack of a better word. I like to see how they relate to the Soul Selves Framework, because essentially the Soul Selves Framework is these steps along a spiritual path. So Michael Singer sees this continuum as a continuum of letting go, he calls it, whereas I call it sort of a continuum between the ego and the soul. And what I find so fascinating, and I'm really so excited about this sort of discovery, is that he goes beyond what the Soul Selves Framework has gone, and taking it deeper, taking it farther into the spiritual path. And I knew on some level that existed, but I just hadn't uncovered it yet. And so this is my uncovering of what happens past the transcendent self. And so in the beginning, he kind of refers to what I call the bodily self as like the hamster wheel. We're on this hamster wheel in our mind, and essentially it's talking a lot about our mind. And at some point we realize that we're just not achieving anything. We're not getting anywhere. We're not stepping out of this hamster wheel in order to progress spiritually. And so sort of the first step that he talks about is deciding that you want to get off of this hamster wheel. And so you give up your wants and your want-nots. And this is a really interesting interpretation of how to keep remembering that there's more to ourselves than our mind and our egos. And so when we start to become aware of our wants and our desires and the things that we don't want, when we're listening to those voices or those thoughts, when we're paying attention, when we bring our awareness to those thoughts in our minds, then as he says, we step out of the game. And the more we're able to do this and relax away from that, then the deeper we move along our spiritual journey or on this spiritual path. And with the Soul Selves Framework, I go into a lot more detail with the bodily self and with what I call the vital self, and then the thinking self and the observer self. And these are sort of the four selves before the transcendent self. Whereas I realized Michael Singer's explanation really steps over a lot of those details and really gets to the transcendent self quite quickly, which is beautiful to hear somebody else explain what to me I call the transcendent self. But for him, again, it always comes down to this image of this waterfall or this water fountain, this endless source of love that is welling within us. So when we're relaxed enough back into our spiritual selves, we tap into this place of infinite energy, of infinite love. And once we're able to sort of to stay there and bring that energy to us consistently, it just becomes this beautiful experience. And with the soul selves, it sort of ended there on some level for me. And Michael Singer then goes and asks the next deeper question beyond that, is like, once you're in that transcendent space, once you're in that fountain of unlimited love and unlimited potential, where does that come from, right? That's the next question. It's like, where is that coming from? And then when you relax deeper into that question, it just opens up this other sort of extended level of spirituality. So we find ourselves in this transcendent space, this fountain of energy, this fountain of love, this unlimited, infinite source. And we ask, where does that source come from? And when we relax into that, we find that there is this deeper space that exists beyond that. But that space is still separated. It's still sort of a duality between me in this vessel, in this body, and this infinite source of energy. And as Michael Singer explains, and as he's researched with the yogi masters and others who've spent time in this infinite space, in this Shakti, or this universal energy, all the different names for it that exist. In that space, we find ourselves asking again, where does it come from? And when we move again one step deeper along our spiritual path, one step further along the spiritual path, that division between self and this universal energy disintegrates or diminishes, and it all becomes one. And that's, where we hear about the oneness of everything. So there's no self anymore. That duality is lost. Me as a person no longer exists. And as he says, we become that drop of water in the ocean, and like we can't ever find that drop, that specific drop in the ocean again. As it all becomes one, we merge into this bigger energy that is everything. So I'm thrilled to expand this idea of the soul selves into these other steps and have that understanding. Even if I don't explain it very well, there's this sort of like knowing, this understanding that we all have once we hear it, that we can relate to. And so as Michael Singer sort of describes, again, the spiritual path is just this continuum of relaxing away from what consciousness is attached to. And I love the parallel to the Soul Selves Framework. Always, I love the parallel to, the ego and the soul continuum as I describe it. And I look forward to exploring it more and sharing it more.